Title. I'm not actually going to talk about denial as such. I'm going to talk about what would happen if we tried to stop denying that this is happening. I think one of the reasons why we don't stop denying is that we're frightened to look down. What would happen if we look down? There's a kind of conceptual vertigo operates here. But I want to ask what would happen if we look down. So that's my question. In answering it, I shall be curt and polemic, partly because I'm losing my voice, partly because Mike says I've only got 15 minutes, but also actually because I think that in this tortuously complex field it is sometimes worth it just for its own sake to be curt and polemic. You might want to be the judge of that afterwards. So Becky spoke optimistically about politicians. I'm a bit less optimistic. The three political factors that I'd like to draw your attention to are firstly progressivism, the drive towards ever increasing material prosperity, you know, the energy intensive globalized social model pursued by going on 9 billion people, such a powerful mindset that it's taken over the minds of people like Mark Linus and most recently it seems Jonathan Porritt, who should and actually do know better. Then there's the tragedy of the commons, Garrett Hardin's insight, which has never actually been controverted, that it's in no one's interest to move first to constraints on a common resource until everybody else has accepted them first. And thirdly, sustainable development, the paradigm in which all this is now thought about. Your flexible friend. Sustainable development is, I like to image it as a set of spanners made of lead. You know, lovely set, they look beautiful, you can have every gauge you want, but under pressure, what always is going to give is the spanner, not the nut, because it only works in terms of constraints from the future, alleged constraints from the future, which actually we construct, and we construct them as we want them to be, and so it's actually never possible to be too little or too late under the sustainable development model. Add to that one, call it biogeophysical factor, sooner rather than later there will come a point of no return for the global warming process. That just seems to be inherent in the nature of complex interactive systems under linear pressure. Whether it's plus 2 degrees C, whether it's a tipping point or, you know, just where a certain momentum of a slide becomes unstoppable, how far we can technologically tweak it here and there, they're still ultimately going to come down to some number of parts per million CO2 equivalent, which is not, you know, if we go beyond it, well, we've done it. Add those together and I think you get that result. Whatever the threshold is, we'll cross it. That's just in the nature of the system. From which it follows that, firstly, serious climate jeopardy is as good as inevitable. One could put it higher, one could talk about climate-related global geopolitical chaos and not be too alarmist, it seems to me, but let's stay modest. Serious climate jeopardy is coming. And secondly, we should stop pretending otherwise. That's easy to say. How do you do it? Stopping pretending. That means, I think, two things: changing our minds and changing our plans. Recognizing some things we've been trying to ignore and retrieving what we can from what's coming. Some things we've been trying to ignore. We have tragically screwed up. Tragically, genuinely tragically, because what's caused this is inherent in strengths of the kind of civilization we've built. Scientific rationality, the empiricist spirit, individual creativity, individual entrepreneurial energy, all those things are strengths of our civilization, but inherent in them are the weaknesses that have brought this on us. We don't know what's coming. This is crucial. I mean, if you think about it, we've got to expect changes in energy sources and availability, whether through peak oil or carbon constraints, climate-related consequences of those changes on ecological systems, on human health, on simply patterns of weather and weather events, food supply and other land use impacts, unemployment and related economic impacts, security impacts, and for none of these do we know the scale, the timing, the interactivity in any way that it would enable us to make reliable predictions. This is, in effect, indeterminacy. We don't know what's coming when. As a corollary of that, we aren't going to be in control, and progress is over in the sense of advancing material prosperity for 9 billion people. To maintain that, we'd need to be able to predict and control, and we can't. Now, I've heard Bill McKibben describe recognizing these things as hunkering down. That's an American expression, which I take to mean something like, dourly digging in. But it needn't have that feel to it. It could be reawakening ourselves to some key recognitions about the human condition. Tragically, screwing up is what human beings do. If actually you look at history with a disillusioned eye, an eye cleared from the miasma of denial, the urban smog of utilitarian progressivism, that's just self-evident. We never really know what's coming. As Hume long ago told us, we're always in the position of the general staff preparing for the last war. We're always preparing for the last time the empirical generalization was extrapolated from. We never really know what's coming. We're never really in control. If you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. All we can ever do is be as full spectrum alert to what's over the horizon as we can. The kind of full spectrum alertness that wild things have naturally. All we can do is try and cultivate it. And there are never any guarantees. Progressivism was always an attempt to pin down the future and make it manageable, guaranteeable. In George Orwell's rather crushing phrase, the project of making the world safe for little fat men. But thank God it isn't ever going to be safe for little fat men, and the truth here is, with Lawrence, you can never insure against the future except by really believing in the best bit of yourself and the power beyond it. So, in the spirit of those recognitions, how to retrieve what we can from what's coming? Well, build resilience. Like the transition movement says. Like the green movement from way back when has been saying, until it got hijacked by Suits as sustainable development. Build resilience means start from where you are and go as far as you could reach. Now, Mike asked me to address what that might mean if we were starting from Lancaster University, and actually a fountain of possibilities. So, energy descent, what the transition people call energy descent. Plan for not being able to rely on fossil fuels. Take the wind turbine and run with it, as it were. You know, stick another one on the roundabout at the top of Bigforth Drive instead of that silly flagpole. Put one on the raised bit of ground between the rugby pitches, you know, just right opposite the Vice-Chancellor's Croft. There are other places on this large campus where we could duplicate the wind turbine. Energy use, make every room like, you know, as it is in the stacks in the library. The lights come on when you go in there and go off when you go out. Let's not have the learning zone lit 24 hours. Student profile. Do not plan the university's medium-term financial future on the basis of cohorts of students from across the world, from the Far East, because they won't be coming. Plan it on the basis of, you know, a favoured destination for students from the north of England, maybe. Transport dependence. Quadruple the cost of the parking permit. Remove it altogether from professors and senior managers so it isn't a regressive move. The estate. You know, no more outdoor relief for the high energy building trade, which is what the estate has been for as long as I can remember. Building only with sustainable materials and in sustainable ways. And, you know, use the grounds sensibly. Dig up 3/4 of the car parks and turn them over to allotment space and let the students grow food to help pay off their obscene levels of grant. Okay? Well, you know, that's the easy bit. Because any large-scale corporate enterprise can do that, could be expected to try and do that. And we are a university, not a large-scale corporate enterprise. I perhaps better repeat that in case anybody from senior management is here. This is a university, not a large-scale corporate enterprise. So the harder bit is to do with the function of a university as such. Now, I spoke a little bit ago about full spectrum alertness. I think the human version of that is full spectrum intelligence, and I can't think of a better short definition of what a university ought to be about. If we want environmentally intelligent graduates, we have to have an environmentally intelligent higher education curriculum. Lancaster is one of the places where that really could happen. I speak on the basis of some research into this done a few years ago now, but I'm sure it's still true. It's a place where coherent interdisciplinary education on environmental themes could go on. You know, we've got here the Environment Centre, we've got Environmentally Alert Management School, we've got environmental sociology, we've got geography, we've even got the not quite completely abandoned tradition of environmental philosophy in this place. Put them together in curricular terms, and then what my former Lancaster colleague Mike Michael, I mean anybody else who can remember Mike Michael will know how long I've been around, called paradisciplinarity, the creative coexistence in informal exchange of all the different ways there are of thinking about these issues, as here. There's a saying attributed to the German polymath Goethe, although actually if you look on the internet it turns out to have been said by W.H. Murray, who was a Scottish mountaineering person, I understand, but it jolly well ought to have been said by Goethe, so let's just take it that it was. Whatever you can do or dream, you can begin it. Boldness has genius, power and magic in it. So let's begin it. That's it.